What would you do if you were sitting across from someone who held absolute authority over the next few minutes of your life? Not a judge, not a boss, but someone who can decide whether you walk away or whether everything changes. You're calm, you're honest, you have nothing to hide, and then the officer across from you leans forward slightly, looks you right in the eyes, and repeats a question they already asked 60 seconds ago. Same words, same tone, same pacing. Most people don't even notice it happen. And that's exactly why you need to hear this right now. Pause for a second and think. Have you ever had someone ask you the same question twice in a row? Not because they didn't hear you, not because they're confused, but because they're watching something in your face that you didn't even know you were showing. Go ahead and type in the comments right now what you think that means. Because I promise you, what you're about to learn will change how you see every single conversation you have for the rest of your life. Most people think that when an officer repeats a question, they just want clarification. Maybe they misheard you, maybe they're being thorough, but that's not what's actually happening. And if you believe that harmless explanation, you are missing one of the most powerful psychological tools ever built into law enforcement training. This isn't a mistake. This isn't a tick. This is deliberate. This is surgical. And the reason it works is because of something hiding inside your own brain that you cannot control. Let me back up for a second and tell you why you should listen to me on this. What I'm about to share comes from decades of behavioral analysis, interrogation training manuals that are not available to the public, and real case studies from federal law enforcement agencies across the country. This isn't theory, this isn't clickbait. This is the actual method taught at places like the FBI National Academy and used by thousands of officers every single day. By the time you finish watching this video, you will understand exactly what's happening when that question comes back around. You will know why silence is sometimes the most powerful word in your vocabulary, and you will never answer a repeated question the same way again. That is a promise. So here's what's actually happening inside that moment. When an officer asks you a question the first time, your brain does something automatic. It retrieves information, constructs an answer, and delivers it through a filter of truth or deception. That's the first layer. But here's the part nobody talks about. When they ask you the exact same question again, your brain doesn't just replay the first answer. It creates a new answer. And that's where everything breaks open for them. Stay with me, because this next part matters more than anything else in this video. Your memory is not a recording device. It's a reconstruction machine. Every time you recall something, your brain rebuilds that memory from scratch. And every time it rebuilds, it changes. Sometimes a little, sometimes a lot. When you hear the same question twice, your brain has to choose. Do you repeat your exact words from before? Do you add more detail? Do you leave something out? And here's the trap that most people fall into without even realizing it. An honest person will often give slightly different answers each time because memory is fluid. But a deceptive person will usually repeat their answer word for word because they rehearsed it. And that reversal is exactly what the officer is looking for. Let me say that again because this is the most important sentence in this entire script. Honest people vary their answers. Deceptive people memorize them. The officer knows this. You didn't. And now that you do, you can never unsee it. But wait, that's not the only reason they repeat questions. There's a second layer to this that's even more psychological. And this is where most people get completely destroyed without even knowing the battle started. When an officer repeats a question, they are also testing your emotional baseline. The first time you answer, you're at a certain level of stress. Maybe a 3 out of 10 if you're nervous but innocent. The second time, if you're innocent, your stress usually goes down because you realize the question isn't a trap. But if you're hiding something, your stress goes up because now you're thinking, wait, why are they asking again? Did I slip? Do they know something? That spike in anxiety shows up in micro-expressions, in pupil dilation, in the way your breathing changes. The officer doesn't need a lie detector machine. They have you. And you just told them everything. This is the part of the video where I want you to really think about your own experiences. Have you ever been asked the same question twice in a job interview? By a partner during an argument? By a friend who didn't believe you? Comment below what happened. Because I guarantee you felt something shift in that moment. You just didn't have the language for it until now. Here's where the wrong way versus the right way becomes critical. Most people, when they hear the same question again, do one of two things. Both are wrong. The first wrong move is getting defensive. They say something like, I already answered that. Or, didn't you hear me the first time? That response signals guilt more clearly than a confession. Why? Because innocent people don't usually care about repeating themselves. They just answer again. Defensiveness is the smell of deception. The second wrong move is over-explaining. They add new details that weren't there before, trying to sound more helpful, more cooperative, more believable. But here's what they don't realize. Every new detail is a new thread the officer can pull, and once they start pulling, the whole thing unravels. So what's the right way? The smart move is something almost no one does naturally. But once you learn it, it changes everything. When an officer repeats a question, you answer it the same way you answered it the first time. Not word for word like a robot, but with the same core facts, the same level of detail, and the same emotional tone. You don't add, you don't subtract, you don't defend. You don't explain, you simply answer again as if it's the first time you've heard it. This consistency, without rigidity, is the signature of an honest person, and the officer knows that too. But here's where this gets even deeper. Because the question repetition technique isn't just about what you say, it's about what you don't say. And there's a specific kind of silence that happens right before you answer that the officer is listening for more carefully than your actual words. Most people think that when an officer asks a question, the only thing that matters is the answer. That is dangerously wrong. The gap between the question and your answer is a psychological goldmine. If you answer too fast, it can sound rehearsed. If you pause too long, it can sound like you're crafting a lie. But here's the part they don't teach in those YouTube videos about your rights. An innocent person's pause usually matches the complexity of the question. Simple question, short pause. Complex question, longer pause. A deceptive person's pause often doesn't match. They pause too long on easy questions because they're running through their story. Or they answer too fast on hard questions because they've already rehearsed the lie. This is the kind of detail that separates people who watch videos like this from people who need to watch videos like this. You are now seeing the matrix. And once you see it, you can't go back. Let me give you a real example so you understand exactly how this plays out in the real world. There's a recorded interrogation from a Midwest police department that training academies still use today. The officer asks the suspect, "Where were you last night between 8 and 10?" The suspect says, "I was at home watching TV." 15 seconds later, the officer asks, "So just to be clear, where were you between 8 and 10 last night?" Same question, same words. The suspect this time says, "I told you, I was home. I was watching TV by myself." Notice the difference? The first answer was clean. The second answer added, "by myself." That addition wasn't helpful. It was defensive. It was the suspect trying to preemptively explain away why no one could verify his alibi. The officer caught it immediately. And that single phrase led to 8 more questions that eventually broke the whole case open. The suspect wasn't guilty of what they originally thought, but he was guilty of something else entirely, and he told on himself with 2 words he didn't need to say. This is why you need to understand this even if you never break a single law in your entire life. Because the same psychology applies in job interviews, in negotiations, in conversations with your boss, in arguments with your partner. Anytime someone repeats a question to you, they are testing your consistency, and your response will either build trust or destroy it. You might be thinking, okay, this is useful, but what if I'm actually nervous even though I'm innocent? What if I have anxiety? What if I just don't like being questioned? That's a fair point. And here's the answer that most experts won't tell you. Nervousness is not the same thing as deception. Officers know this. They are trained to distinguish between the two. The difference is pattern, not presence. A nervous but honest person will show signs of stress that decrease over time as they realize the conversation isn't threatening. A deceptive person's stress usually increases over time as they realize the questions are getting closer to the truth. So if you're anxious by nature, don't panic, just be consistent. Answer the same way each time, don't over-explain, don't get defensive, don't try to manage the officer's perception of you. That last one is the killer. Trying to control how someone sees you is the single biggest red flag in any interrogation. Honest people don't worry about how they look. They just tell the truth and let the chips fall. Now I want to take you even deeper into the psychology here because there's a third reason officers repeat questions that almost no one talks about. And this one is the most subtle and the most powerful. When an officer repeats a question, they are also testing your listening. This sounds small, but it's huge. An innocent person hears the exact same question and answers it directly. A deceptive person often answers a slightly different question because they're so focused on their story that they stop listening to what's actually being asked. The officer will ask, "Did you touch the car?" The deceptive person will answer, "I didn't steal anything from the car." See the shift? The officer didn't ask about stealing. They asked about touching. But the deceptive person's brain automatically pivoted to the crime they're worried about, not the question they were asked. That mismatch is a tell. And it's one of the most reliable tells in all of forensic psychology. This is the kind of insight that makes you feel like you're cheating at a game you didn't even know you were playing. But here's the hard truth. Knowing this doesn't make you immune to it. Your brain will still want to over-explain. It will still want to get defensive. It will still want to manage how you look. The difference is that now, in that moment, you'll feel the impulse, and you can choose not to act on it. That's the power of awareness, not control over the other person, control over yourself. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like someone was testing you and you didn't know why? Maybe a teacher asking the same question twice. A parent. A police officer at a traffic stop. Comment your story below because I read these and I promise you, your experience is exactly what thousands of other viewers need to hear. Here's the part of the video where I give you the tactical breakdown. The step-by-step of exactly what to do if you ever find yourself on the receiving end of a repeated question in any high-stakes conversation. Step 1. Recognize what's happening. Don't react emotionally. Just notice. Say to yourself, "They are testing my consistency." That's all. Step 2. Take a natural pause. Not a long dramatic pause, just the normal amount of time it would take you to hear a question and answer it honestly. Step 3. Answer again with the same core information. Don't add new details. Don't subtract old ones. Don't defend why you already answered. Just answer. Step 4. Watch your tone. Keep it flat. Keep it cooperative. Don't go cold. Don't go hot. Just neutral and helpful. Step 5. After you answer, stop talking. This is where almost everyone fails. They answer and then they keep talking because silence feels uncomfortable. But the moment you stop talking, you regain control. Let the officer ask the next question. Don't fill the silence for them. That last step is so important, I want to say it differently so it sticks. When you answer a repeated question, the most powerful thing you can do after your last word is nothing. Say what you need to say, then close your mouth. Let the silence sit there. Because in that silence, the officer learns more about you than in anything you could possibly add. A person who is comfortable with silence is almost always telling the truth. A person who rushes to fill silence is almost always hiding something. Be the person who can sit in the quiet. Now let me zoom out for a second, because this video isn't really about police interrogations. Not entirely. It's about power dynamics. It's about who controls the frame of a conversation. When someone repeats a question to you, they are subtly asserting dominance. They are saying, I control the pace here, I decide what matters. And most people, without even thinking, accept that frame. They get flustered, they get defensive, they start dancing, but you don't have to. You can simply answer again, calmly, consistently, and then wait. That response doesn't fight the frame. It doesn't need to. It just refuses to be shaken by it. And that refusal is more powerful than any clever comeback or legal objection you could muster. Think about the last time someone tried to rattle you with a question. Maybe a boss asking why a project was late even after you explained. Maybe a friend asking why you didn't call back even after you apologized. Maybe a stranger asking for your story twice to see if it changed. In that moment you had a choice. You could get defensive, over-explain, or shut down. Or you could simply answer again, exactly as you did the first time, and let the other person decide what to do with that consistency. That is not weakness. That is the strongest move on the board. Here's what I want you to take away from this entire video. When an officer repeats a question, there is always a reason. That reason is not confusion. It is not politeness. It is not thoroughness. It is psychological targeting. They are looking for inconsistency, for defensiveness, for over-explanation, for stress patterns, for mismatched pauses, for answers that don't fit the question. And the only defense against all of that is the simplest thing in the world. Tell the truth. Tell it the same way twice, then stop talking. That sounds easy, but in the moment, with adrenaline pumping and someone in authority staring at you, it is one of the hardest things you will ever do. Which is why you need to decide now, before it ever happens, how you will respond. Decide that you will be the calm one. Decide that you will not be rattled by repetition. Decide that you will answer, and then you will wait. That decision, made today, is worth more than any advice you could try to remember in the heat of the moment. So here's my final question for you, and I want you to actually answer it in the comments. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone repeated a question to you, and you felt something shift? What happened? What did you do? What do you wish you had done differently? Your story matters because someone watching this right now has been through the exact same thing and doesn't know how to process it yet. Be the person who helps them understand. Before you go, remember this. The most powerful person in any conversation is not the one asking the questions, it's the one who cannot be shaken by them. You now know something that most people will never know. You see the technique, you understand the psychology, you have the playbook. What you do with that knowledge is up to you. But if you ever find yourself sitting across from someone who asks you the same question twice, take a breath, answer again, and then smile on the inside because you finally understand the game. And now, you're the one who gets to decide how it ends.